I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone to a pretty busy regular session of Goldendale City Council tonight. We have two council members that have requested to be excused because of illness or work, some of both. Do we have a motion to that effect, to excuse these two from attending tonight's council?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to excuse Filberto Ontiveros and Mylan Walling from attendance at the Goldendale City Council regular meeting for May 16, 2022. Thank you very much.
Vote on it.
Pardon me?
Do we need to vote on that?
Yes, sorry. I just got that part done. That's enough. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody vote against that? We don't have a public hearing scheduled tonight, but under the agenda and consent agenda, I've got 3 amendments to make. I believe I have just 3. And I'd like to amend them to add under ordinances. The first one is the ordinance for residential zoning code amendment, and the second one is the salary schedule ordinance for the police department. These 2 documents you have in your packet, but we need a motion to allow those, and I have one other. The other one is to add under presentations. The second presentation will be by Mike Goodpastor, and so we need those 3 additions to the amendments approved, if you approve.
I move to add those 3 items to this evening's agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to add those amendments to the agenda for tonight's meeting. 2 as ordinances, 1 as a presentation. With that, do we have a motion to approve the agenda and the consent agenda?
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda and the consent agenda for Goldendale City Council for tonight. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Does anyone have anything further they want to add to the agenda? If not, we'll go on with the meeting. The first item is a presentation by Todd Chase. It'll be a Zoom presentation, and I'll turn it over to Larry because it's good to welcome Todd. And
Okay, welcome Todd. Thanks for coming tonight. Can you hear us okay?
yes.
Okay. It's set up all the way.
Yep.
Well, Todd Chase is with FCS Group. They do a lot of work for municipalities. He's actually worked on several projects for the city of Goldendale. He did the Incubator Study for the industrial park when we had that going. And he did a buildable land survey for Quickitat County. He's been hired to do the water sewer rate study for us, which that is ongoing. And he's here tonight to introduce the council to the TIF program, which is the Tax Increment Financing Program, which has recently been adopted by the state of Washington. And we're going to identify ways that it might help the city of Goldendale and as it encourages growth in our community. The other thing he's been doing is he's been working a lot in Oregon under a similar program, but Oregon had it in place for, well, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but probably a good 10 years already. And so he has worked with many cities in Oregon to apply this type of financing. And so we're gonna see if it makes sense for Goldendale. And this is a kind of an introductory presentation on that program. So with that, Todd, we're ready to hear.
Okay, can I share my screen or do you want to pull up the PowerPoint?
I don't have access to email on this one, so I can share your screen. So I'm just changing it to you as the host, and then you can share your screen, and then you can just change it back to me when you're done.
Here we go.
Did you have this presentation in your packet?
Well, thank you for including me remotely. I hope you all can hear me okay. And this is just a very brief, maybe 10-minute overview of tax increment financing. And as Larry mentioned, we recently conducted a buildable land inventory for Quickitat County, and that includes Goldendale. So we have very good current information about where some of the potential catalyst development sites are throughout Goldendale, both vacant land as well as redevelopment sites. So if council chooses to move forward with this project, I think you have a good base of information to start with, which you didn't have about a year ago. So that's good news. Now let me explain what tax increment financing is. These are kind of the details right out of the House bill, or the Senate bill from Washington, which seems to be modeled on what Oregon has. A lot of times I see that between the two states, very similar legislative guidelines for how to do both financing as well as this type of work. And I'll get into details with an example from Oregon, which is probably very relevant to what the opportunities are there in Goldendale. For cities, it is very new in Washington State, really. Before this legislation, we had to get individual approval from the legislature on specific tax increment areas throughout the state. And one of the first was in Vancouver, and we were able to work on that project a good 20 years ago. It was a downtown project designed to capture the tax increment of future development in downtown and use that money to build a parking structure in downtown. So it was very successful in downtown Vancouver. And over time, we've done dozens of these in Oregon. And so very familiar with kind of how it's supposed to work and some of the advantages and disadvantages and challenges of creating a TIF district. So basically, the steps involved in creating one are pretty straightforward. We have to identify a location with a boundary around the increment area. The area, you have to state the duration, and really the duration can't be more than 25 years maximum. We have to identify the tax lots that are to be included in the increment area. Typically, the boundary follows tax lot boundaries, and we usually have to hire a survey outfit, an engineering firm, to describe the meets and bounds of the area so it can be officially recorded. The importance of these districts are really they're intended to leverage private investment within the zone, the increment area. And as part of the work to set one up, we usually include some market data to identify the opportunities that we expect to occur in terms of net new development, whether it be residential residential or commercial or industrial that's likely to occur with and without the tax increment zone. The advantage of the tax increment area, you'll see in a minute, is the local jurisdiction that sets it up, basically the city, captures all the net new tax revenue for the time period that the zone is in effect, and uses that revenue from not only their mill rate, but all the local mill rates in the district. So it doesn't affect the state or the school mill rates. It only affects the local mill rates. And all those existing tax entities, they continue to collect whatever they were collecting the year before you set up the district. So they never get less money. But the money that they would have gotten, that would have gone into their general fund is diverted into the tax increment finance district fund. And you get that money and use that to pay off bonds or to set up revolving loan programs designed to encourage private development. So the objective of this is really to generate jobs from private development, to create net new assessed value for the jurisdiction, so that after the tax increment finance zone sunsets in 20 or 25 years, there will be basically kind of a windfall of revenue to all the affected local districts, because it would be net new development that would not have occurred without the district in place. I'll explain kind of some of the details about setting one up here. As I mentioned, you have to do a project analysis, basically a report, a feasibility study. A jurisdiction cannot have more than 2 districts at one time, and they cannot overlap. Our understanding is that the 2 districts in combination can't have more than 200 million in assessed value, or more than 20% of the total assessed value of the city, which is ever less. Once the district is established, the boundaries can't be changed. And when you do establish the boundary, or establish the ordinance for the district, the revenue that's used in the district must be for one of the stated purposes that were listed in the ordinance. And that typically includes capital, facilities, or incentives to create affordable housing, or revolving loan programs that are eligible for tax increment funds, such as a facade loan program. You use it for grants, matching programs for private investment, to redo buildings, etc. And as I mentioned, the district can not last more than 25 years, and you collect revenue as long as you have debt service to pay for the cost of improvements. So that might be 20 years, it might be 25 years. It all depends on what kind of debt the jurisdiction takes on. And if you do have a tax increment finance district set up, there are special public works trust fund monies and state financing in place to provide loans to jurisdictions that have tax increment financing districts. So should make it pretty easy to obtain funding and financing from the state. This is an example from Hermiston, Eastern Oregon, in a rural community that's rapidly growing. Basically, all this area in this large vacant land, is a triangle of land, is slated for future development once we create a tax increment financing district, which is underway. We expect to have that created by the end of the year. That district would accommodate about 1,350 homes on about 353 acres. We would use the money primarily for parks and a planned water reservoir. potentially a school site. As part of setting up the district, we look at market growth assumptions. The area's been adding about 250 to 350 people per year. Has a great opportunity for workforce housing. Homes priced between $250,000 and $500,000. As part of the district, we established a capital improvement program to extend sewer and water to the site, build a reservoir for water, some booster upgrades, and some water rights that we require. The way the district works basically is you start out in year 0 or year 1 with a frozen base of the existing assessed value. Because this is an agricultural site used for farming, basically the value is about $150,000 according to the assessment. So it's really not generating much tax revenue at all. If this development occurs over 20, 25 years, there will be a gain in assessed value that would not be subject to the cap. The state has a 2% cap. In Washington, there's a 3% cap. All that new development would not be subject to that cap, so it would generate quite a bit of revenue based on the mill rates of the sewer district or the county, the city, fire district, there's an irrigation district, there's a vector control district. All those mill rates would be applied to that assessed value. And revenue from that would be captured to pay off the bonds. And once those bonds expire or pay off, this green part would be a windfall to existing districts that would then collect that new revenue once the district sunsets. Excuse me. So that's really how it's to be created. We can open up for questions, and I'm sure you have a few.
Council, we have questions or comments. This is the topic of stimulating development in this town that we've talked about as a council many times. Yes, Steve?
Just what? What's our next move?
That's a tough question. We'll have to see. Todd, can you hear all right?
Yes. Well, I think you would have to conduct a feasibility study and create a draft ordinance. There would be a minimum of 2 public meetings that would be required. It would be a feasibility study that would look at different areas of the city. As I mentioned, we look at all these buildable land sites and try to find a coterminous area that would encompass about 20% of the city's assessed value and still have a lot of potential for future development. And we would need to identify what types of water and sewer improvements would be needed to serve those future development sites, and the different uses of funds, increment funds, which is pretty unlimited. I mean, we can be pretty general about how we want to use the funding, but it's got to be for capital, not operations and maintenance. That study would probably take about 4 to 6 months with all the public meetings. Cost of doing those studies tends to be about $30,000, give or take, depending on how much work we do or the consultant does and how much work the city staff would do. I don't know if there's grant money available from the state to assist you with paying for this, but I have seen situations where cities have partnered with major property owners or developers to help shoulder the cost of those things. You split the cost. if one property owner might be a major beneficiary. But that's one way to help pay for it. But that's typically just the time frame. It would take up, as I mentioned, about 6 months to do a study like that. And there'd be quite a bit of give and take with the community input from the planning commission, the council, the county, the affected districts all need to be met with and to be informed about how this will benefit them in the long run. So you would ideally get buy-in right out of the chute.
Okay, got work cut out for us.
Very much so.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, you mentioned looking for an area that is would equate to about 20% of the total assessed value of the jurisdiction, but this could be utilized for any scale project, couldn't it? I mean, it wouldn't have to necessarily be that large.
Correct. Ideally, you wouldn't want the projects to be large enough where there's a measurable impact on assessed value. And certainly if the jurisdiction is going to invest in a road, sewer, water line, any capacity improvement, you want to make sure that those catalyst projects are large enough to give you a good return at the time. But you're right, there's no minimum private investment required.
Yes, Steve.
I noticed on the cover page here, there is a highlighted area. Is that a suggested area for this program?
No, that was just one of the opportunity sites that we flagged during the building landscape. And, just shows you that, there's some large sites that are big enough to potentially attract a regional developer to partner with the local property to build, hundreds of homes. And that's typically what it takes to attract a larger investor to the city of Goldendale.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Todd, I noticed there can be more than one project of this nature within a city. Are there things that we have to be aware of so we know they can be used in certain ways? But there's areas in a number of places in Goldendale that I think will qualify for this type of approach if the public goes with it, or our local developers and other developers recognize it.
That's a great point. We might get into this and realize that we need two separate districts, not one. But we can gerrymander the district, for lack of a better word, to keep it simple, But those options are out there. And like I said, this is a brand new program. A lot of jurisdictions haven't taken advantage of it quite yet, but a lot are thinking about it. So it makes a lot of sense in communities that don't necessarily have access to a lot of funding to leverage private development. And if a developer wasn't required to build a collector street, for example, and instead that project was paid for through tax increment financing dollars, it might be very enticing to a developer to then commit through a development agreement a certain level of improvements that the city can support.
Any other question, Pat?
Yeah, could the district be overlaid in a, like with what I guess the best way I would describe it as mixed use, where you have different types of zoning such as, R1, R2, commercial, industrial. Can that include all those areas, the district?
Yes,
Okay.
no doubt.
Any other comments? You have an excellent expert here that we get to ask questions of. Anything further that we need for starting off? One of the things I noticed in your explanation, I believe, at the Reds meeting, we have local developers that we, of course, want to have them involved, but they can partner with other developers to do one of these neighborhoods or development ideas and carry that out as in partnership, which is good for both sides of that situation. There's much larger developers than what we actually have here in our community.
Yeah, you might even, I mean, we've done this, but you might even use this opportunity to create like a prospectus style development documentation that could be circulated amongst some property owners and selected developers, and they would share with their bankers, to show that, the area is growing, the economy is healthy, there's a lot of potential, it's close to some very established areas, the Dalles, the river, Vancouver, Portland, etc. All those things that an investor would want to see could be kind of rolled into kind of an executive summary style document. You don't have to act on it. You can create the districts and wait, until the development community has something they want, propose to you. It actually is a requirement that you have to wait 5 years before you can spend tax increment financing dollars. So nothing happens immediately once you set a district up. You take those initial 5 years and build up your reserves so that then the board can decide how best to spend that money.
Thank you, Todd. Any further? I know we're going to have a lot of questions over the next few months from there.
So the infrastructure improvements aren't made until after at least a 5-year period, is that correct?
That's my read of the legislation. You could probably do a interim financing type of vehicle, a revenue anticipation note, or some interim financing if you really wanted to spend the money sooner. But you can't obligate tax increment financing dollars for 5 years, the way I read it.
So can you use those dollars that pay back the increment of the financing?
That it would probably need some legal interpretation on that, but I that's my reading of it.
Any other questions? Larry, did you have anything you wanted to ask? I know you know a lot about this.
I'm good.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Todd, very, very much. We'll have some more questions eventually.
Well,
Thank
that's
you.
how to reach me. Take care, everybody.
Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
The next item, and I'm not sure whether he's on the line or not, I think he is a presentation by Mike Goodpasture.
It's on one.
He's not on the line, okay. Well, we'll leave that aside.
Mayor,
Yes.
do you want to go back and address the minutes and consent agenda?
Do you want to?
Did we address the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that, okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right,
Not saying you can't do it, I think we have done it.
all right.
Thank you. Well, we'll put aside Mike Goodpasture's presentation. I believe it was mostly on library issues, which the committee's already had extensive discussion of, so we'll wait and see what the follow-up might be there. Let's go now to our department reports, and we'll start with the Goldendale Fire Department.
All right, Mayor. Talked to Noah before I came this evening, and so he had a few things he'd like me to bring up. One is, in light of past events we've had, we encourage everybody to check their smoke detectors. Also, not a bad idea that residents had fire extinguishers. Have a fire extinguisher in your residence and know how to use it, and also to periodically, actually monthly, inspect it. One thing that I would bring up, we have had an extremely wet spring, which has brought on a lot of fuels. And we all know that it will get dry and hot this summer, so be prepared for that. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Steve. Goldendale Police Department Fire Chief, Police Chief Jay Hundiker. I'm just going to switch your career all around.
You've been trying to do that all day.
I know.
Thank you, Mayor. Last time when we talked with the council, we were talking about TIP, which is that trauma intervention program. They give support to people with traumatic situations, immediate support, which I, in the last council meeting talked, we did use that for the fire. A question arose from a couple of people about, does TIP go beyond that initial first response and all that stuff, and maybe for persons that weren't directly involved with the traumatic situation, but are affected by it, because maybe like a neighbor knowing the victims of the fire and stuff. So I reached out to Mr. Toomey, who's the coordinator for the program, and he says, yes, they do. So I've put that information out to the agencies and stuff that we can supply. If somebody comes to us and says, hey, these are my friends, I'm having trouble dealing with it, we can give them the number from TIP, put them in contact. TIP will then automatically take their call, do an assessment to see if what is the best support they can give them, and if they need to come to the residence right away. But it starts with the phone call. Also on TIP, I've requested that they come give the council a presentation. He's very happy to do that, but to things that he's taking care of in his life right now, the presentation will not be until July. So as soon as he gives me a date that he can come to one of the council members, I will get that into the presentation agenda for the council to come and you have a chance to talk with him. And he can go in much more depth than I can about their program. I also in past council meetings talked about that we applied for a Legends grant. That it comes around every year from the casino in Toppenish. We fall into that jurisdictional area. I got notification we have been awarded funds, but they don't let you know what you've been awarded until it's the day you're gonna go pick up the check. So my initial request was a little over $43,000, and this is replacing aging laptop computers, which are mobile for the car units, and that includes the computers, the docking station, and the mounting brackets, which are very expensive, and all the work that our technical IT department has to do with them. So I'm pretty excited about that, but I won't know that amount until June 1. Also this past week, we've had the Public Information Officer class, which the Goldendale Police Department hosted. The instructor comes out of Oregon. The class went over very well. We had a total of 10 students, and they were very engaging. And I've got a lot of compliments and thank yous for putting on the class. So that went over real well. And the instructor reached out to me again and says, you know, if we can fill another class, I'll come back next year. So we'll try to do that. But at that time, that's all I got.
That's good. Thank you, Chief. This is also a unique night for the Chief. He's celebrating his 24th year of service to Goldendale in the police department. And we appreciate all of it.
Speech. Been a long 24 years. No, it's been good. It's been good.
I also believe this is National Law Enforcement Week.
Yes, that's coming up. Yeah,
That's next week.
emergency responders. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a good career. It's taken its toll, but it's a good career. No, but I'm glad I'm here at Goldendale.
Thank you. We're glad you're here too.
Yep.
Anything from Public Works?
Yeah, the Public Works crew's been out spraying weeds by the weather's cooperating, and the street sweeper's been fixed. They're out cleaning roads and sidewalks where they sanded this winter and trying to get those cleaned up. They're also been flushing dead-end water mains and working on resolving meter reading issues and grading and cleaning up alleys around the community. They did overlay the 200 block of East Allen and the 400 block of West Collins. If you guys have not drove down there, they actually did a fantastic job, it looks great. On May 23rd, at 5 p.m. To 5:45, we'll be holding a meeting. It's a public meeting, anybody can attend. This will be on Byers Street construction, but those people who live on the street will be sending out a special invite to attend that meeting so that we can just discuss the project with them, discuss traffic control issues, what's coming up, so that they're not caught off guard when the project starts. We just want to prepare them and get any feedback we can and make any modifications that we may need to make prior to entering construction. And then I'll be working with Larry and Dustin Conroy, or is that right, Conroy? Yeah. With TIB grants to see what those are coming up. We are kind of, after talking with Larry, planning, this is going to be a long planning one, but at some point we will use TIB and maybe some other funding. But looking at Mills Street for a complete reconstruction and getting a sidewalk in out to the fairground. That probably won't, it's going to be a long project because there's some easement area issues that we're going to have to get in place to fix it the way it needs to be fixed and straightened out. So, anybody have any questions?
Just what this, the two streets sections that you just mentioned that they overlaid, we've discussed this before. Is this going to be an ongoing effort to address some of these nastier little chunks of side streets?
Yeah, that's really challenging. We're trying to do that. What it made it convenient right now, I guess there must have been last year too, an asphalt plant was in town. And they only would allow us 2 days to run this year because they were so busy. They're so busy out on the highway. I have talked to a contractor I know in Quickitat County from the west side who has an asphalt plant, and he's considering working with us seasonally of bringing it over and setting it up as needed, but there's still a lot more discussion. The reason why it doesn't work hauling for us over to the Dells and bringing it back, it's too long of a turnaround, and the machine will cool down, and then the street's not going to turn out good. Even running 4 trucks, we don't have enough manpower to do that.
So the contractor or the company you're talking about has a portable plant?
They have a portable plant, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I think they're batching this asphalt right out here at Riley's Pit, aren't they?
Yes, and that's a portable plant that I think the state contractor brought in, or the state brought in. I can't remember which one. That would be a better question for Doug. He actually knows Doug knows who he is or has worked with him in the past. But that's going to be short-lived, so we need to find a more permanent fix if we're going to continue doing this. But that is our goal. We would like to do that. We just got to find a way to make it work.
Sure. All right, excellent.
Yeah.
So you only have 2 days to do that? Or
We
is there
have
any
2
more
days to do
okay.
it.
So is there any more in the future you guys are going to be able to do that? Or is
No,
that
they're closing down in 15 days.
Okay.
Probably less than 15 days. So.
They'll have that stretch all covered.
That's what they say. So, yeah, they're moving really quick on it. They ground it really quick, and they're laying it really quick.
All right, good. It's encouraging.
Yeah, that would be great. It's great that they have that machine. That's a gold mine to the city having the paper out there.
Yeah. But no, your prospects.
Yeah.
Future.
Yeah, I'll keep, if that one doesn't work out, we'll
time.
keep working for a solution to try to find something here.
Well, it sounds like you got a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Any other matters, Pat?
Not that I can think of right
Okay,
now. So.
thank you.
I have lots of things, but I'll go on all night. Yeah.
If you aren't aware of what's going on out on Highway 97, I've never seen any state move as fast as Washington State is on that highway.
Yeah.
There are dump trucks everywhere, all kinds of equipment. It's exciting to see what they're doing. We'll go on now to council business, and the first item is Aspect Consulting contract for well performance and rehabilitation. And Larry Bellamy will present that.
I believe at the last council meeting, the council asked us to provide them a proposal to continue working on the well performance and rehabilitation project out at the Bassey wells and at the Coronation Station wells. And we've asked Aspect Consultants to provide us a next steps consultant agreement, and they would work on things like the pumping test at the Coronation Station well, the Bassey well field analysis and rehabilitation. So Jason Shira is with Aspect Consulting, and he's here to briefly explain the need for these next steps, and then we'll take a vote after that. But Jason, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Why don't you give us a brief synopsis of what brings us to this point and where we go from here?
Hey, thank you for having me. As previously we presented, we took a look at the Coronation Station well and the Bassey well field. I'll start with the Coronation Station well. When we previously looked at that, we looked at the data that was provided by the SCADA system. We noticed with the SCADA data that it appeared that the sensors itself were not reporting quite correctly. So that presented some problem in determining what might be happening at the Coronation Station well and its apparent decline in yield. At that time, we recommended pulling the pump in order to further evaluate what might be going on there. Since then, we were talking with Andy O'Connor and learned that the sensor that's in there is actually removable. So we asked him to go ahead and pull up that sensor a little bit and see what happened. So he pulled it up about 40 feet and it reported a 9.7 foot change. So that indicated to us that there's something going on with that sensor that's down in there. And it could be the sensor itself, or it could be the scaling that's from the sensor to the programmable logic control. Then he pulled it, we asked him to pull it out all the way and get a water level measurement. So we were not able to get a water level measurement when we came out there to visit the site last year, in October last year. He was actually able to get a water level measurement, and based on that water level measurement and comparing it to water level, and this is without the pump running, what we call a static water level. It looks like there's at least a 30-foot decline in that static water level. So at the Coronation Station well, we want to evaluate that further without pulling out the pump, because bringing in a contractor, pulling that pump out, it puts the city in a situation where you're down for quite a bit of time for that work to be done, also the expense. So we would like to further evaluate what's going on at the Coronation Station well by pulling out the sensor that's in there, putting in our own temporary sensor, running what we call a step rate pumping test, where we pump the well at 4 different discharge rates, measure water levels. This allows us to evaluate the well performance, and we can compare that to previous work that was done back in 2004, 2005. And that gives us a sense of how the well itself is performing. Because what can happen over time is bacteria can get going in these wells, and as this starts to clog up basically the perforations of the well, and that can cause excessive drawdown in the well as you try to pump that water out. The other thing that we can do then is also look at how that performance is and how it compares to the pump curve for the pump that's in there. Allows us to know if that pump is sized right for how the well's performing. Also will give us a sense of if that pump is performing efficiently as it should.
And thirdly, it'll allow us to verify the groundwater levels and make a comparison to historical values that were recorded with manual measurements. This is all in task 1 of our scope that we provided. What we also included in there is to take a look at the snow water equivalents or the snowpack at Indian Rock. There's a SNOTEL site up there that's maintained by NRCS. We evaluate the trend in snowpack there. So the geology that the chlorination station well is completed in is called the Simcoe Volcanics. It's a very permeable rock. And so if there are declines in groundwater, we feel that looking at the snowpack and if there's any trend there would be helpful to determine what might be going on with this apparent decline in groundwater levels. We would then write that up in a report and, depending on the findings, provide the next steps there. Previously, we looked at the Bassey well field, and we had looked at the Bassey well field back in 2016, and we noticed a decline in well efficiency. So that's that clogging of the well, essentially, causing excessive drawdown, which leads to its inefficient use. You get a decline in yield. It could cost more power to pump that water out. When we looked at the well performance last year, we noticed that it had further decline, and it's getting to, I believe, that 25% decline from in performance from when it was originally constructed. Typically, well rehab is targeted to occur when you have no later than when you have a 20% decline in performance. The reason for that is it starts costing more and more money to rehab the well to get it back to its original performance. So in this scope, for task 2 is looking at the performance using the SCADA data that's been collected. We verify that it's looking well. We would analyze that data further to understand the trends in performance. That would provide a new baseline, basically, or a baseline to look for well performance. Collect some water quality samples, have those analyzed. What that provides us is an idea on the type of bacteria that's down there and what's the best appropriate method to rehabilitate the well. We would take that information and then roll that into a performance bid specification. Typically, we're able to put this out on the street basically through the small works roster. This type of work is probably for what we anticipate would be needed here is a mechanical rehabilitation, not the use of chemicals, which can greatly increase the cost. So this, I would anticipate this is for a contractor, a $75,000 type of level of effort. So we would recommend using the small works roster for this versus a formal bid spec that would work for the city. And then once we got a contractor on board, then we would go from there. We would recommend that the city, we could put this together basically over the summer, go out to bid in the summer, and get somebody scheduled to come out and do this work after the peak water demand, so sometime in the fall. Because what will be involved is taking the well offline, pulling out the pump, and the whole process. The actual work itself is a week or two, but having somebody then go through the pump, make sure it's anything that needs to be refurbished on the pump once it's out, gets ordered, the pump contractor puts it back together, puts it back in the well. All in all, it ends up always taking about a little bit longer than you anticipate, usually about a month plus. And then from there, test the well to reestablish that baseline on performance and go from there. The last task on our scope is for just on-call services. Aspect's been assisting the city with looking at neighboring water use due to some apparent interference drawdown from pumping. That's been going well, working with the neighbor. They're providing metering data. At the end of the year, the irrigation season, we'll take a look at that metering data and go from there. As well as we've been assisting the city with grant funding from the Office of Columbia River for a pilot aquifer storage and recovery program. And so that covers the scope. Let me know if you have any questions.
Questions, council, or comments?
Are the regional well drillers on our public works roster?
Some of them are, but we'll reach out to those that are not and ask them to fill out a small work roster so we get the full complement of people that are interested in that type of work.
Just generally speaking, it looks like we should be mindful of the city's water resources before we're allowing outside the city limits use. Will we get more information from these studies about future projections for water supply for the city of Goldendale overall?
As far as future water use demand?
Water use supply.
Yeah, so especially for the chlorination station, that's why we want to look at the SNOTEL data to understand if there's any trend there as far as decline in precipitation, decline in snowpack. Previously, we looked at, back in 2017, we looked at the groundwater level trends for the Wanapum aquifer, which the Massey wells tap into. And those were quite stable. It looked good. There is an ongoing groundwater level monitoring program that the county carries out, so we can always reach back out to them. And I believe that data is also uploaded to the State Department of Ecology's database. So we can always look at that to verify that groundwater levels are staying stable. The other thing, what we can see something, we do look at that when we're evaluating well efficiency, because one thing that can happen is you think you have a decline in well performance, but actually you have this greater issue of groundwater decline that you can't fix by making your well more efficient. And then definitely as we assist the city with the aquifer storage and recovery program, that will definitely be providing benefit for the long-term supply for the city.
And just, can you give us a little bit more background on ASR in terms of, or is that something that the city is definitely heading towards with OCR, or do we know what the likelihood of the need is for an ASR program?
Yeah, as far as my understanding is, the concept there is to take any excess flow that is coming out of the Simcoe Springs during the periods of low demand and store that water in the Wanapum aquifer for later recovery during peak demand. So it's a way to create basically a reservoir for the city so that during those periods of high demand, there's water available.
Right, but is there a projected need that's been identified for that already, or is that what the work that's being done now is to project whether or not we need to implement ASR?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could answer that as far as what the projected, usually there's a 20-year forecast that has to be done for water system planning that's submitted to the Department of Health, and I don't have that at my fingertips right now to know if that's where the need may be coming from.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the council? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Shira. We appreciate your expertise and all of that aspect serves this community with. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the 5-year reimbursable agreement with Quickitat County.
You want to see if there's a motion for the...
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. I was busy getting to the next step. We need a motion to approve this chlorination station in the Bassy Well
I move to
contract.
approve the chlorination station and Bassy Well contract order number 2 in the amount of not to exceed $43,000 and authorizes Mayor Cannon to sign Aspect Consulting contract order number 2 to proceed with the project.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the chlorination station and Bassy Well contract order number 2 in the amount of and not to exceed $43,000 and authorizes the mayor to sign Aspect Consulting contract order number 2 to proceed with the project. Any further discussion or questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good.
If I may real quick, I was able to find the document. Yes, the need for the ASR is identified in the water system plan, that there's a deficit in water rights and capacity looking out at that 20-year planning horizon. And that's where the need is coming from.
Thanks for looking that up, appreciate it.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the 5-year reimbursable agreement with Quickitat County, and Larry Bellamy will give us the details.
This is merely a way that we can do work using Quickitat County Public Works Department to do various projects, to do like chip seals or something like that. If we decide to do something like that, there's a reimbursable agreement. Or if we had to get some equipment that we needed to replace something, not to replace, but to provide to the city for some reason, because we didn't have a piece of equipment or one of our pieces was broken down or something like that. I know you've done this in White Salmon.
Yeah, primarily for street projects, because the county does it at their cost, which is cheaper than we can get it done someplace else, particularly with chip seal. So we use them a lot for chip sealing these types of contract. This contract doesn't obligate you to anything at this time other than if we use them, you will reimburse them. But those individual contracts will come back with TIB grant approval applications, and all those numbers of what they will be paid will be in there, and then that'll come in front of the city council approved at that time at a later date when we intend to use this type of program.
Okay, we'd like approval to do that.
Okay. Need a motion to approve or discussion or questions further on this topic? Do we have a motion?
I move to authorize the mayor to execute the reimbursable agreement with the Quickitat County Public Works Department.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to execute the reimbursable agreement with the Quickitat County Public Works Department. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you. We'll go on now to the next item on the agenda is ordinances. Those were what we added to the amended agenda. And we'll begin with the first one. Larry Bellamy will present the item. The first item is the residential zoning code amendment.
Okay, this one was presented to the ordinance committee, and I just was reminded that the ordinance committee had decided on these, and let's bring it before the council, and so I prepared the ordinance regarding their recommendation. The recommendation relates to the front entrance of a single-family dwelling unit be facing or at least 45-degree angle to the street that is numbered on. And the ordinance committee, that was becoming to be problematic and hindering some of the plans and specifications for housing on narrow lots especially. We have, still have a lot of those around town, and we have a lot of narrow lots that are still eligible for infill development and et cetera. And so we responded to that concern as it's more like an incentive that we talked about trying to accomplish for some of our contractors and home builders here. So that code section applies to all 5 of the residential codes, and you'll see in the attachment that I've identified those 5, and the ordinance committee has indicated it would like to just eliminate that requirement. They still have the requirement to number their house, but they don't have to do the 45-degree angle on the front entrance. And so the other part of this was a discussion regarding detached residential garages, to recommend for the larger lot developments to go from 1,000 square feet to 2,000 square feet. And we did that in the single-family, suburban, and rural residential zones. We didn't do it in the duplex zones or the multi-residential zones, but did it for the larger lot developments. It makes sense because 1,000 square feet is really not that much when you're talking building a detached garage. And we would like to, I would ask, is the ordinance committee, does that comply with your wishes?
That's how I remember being discussed, too.
Okay. So with that, we would like to go ahead and request approval of the ordinance. And it seems pretty clear what you want. And I was going to suggest that we would just go ahead and waive the second reading and inform the building community that we've done this, and hopefully that'll spur on some more development in our community.
All right, question. Now, these dimensions are for a garage? Just
The 1,000, no, a detached garage.
Detached garage.
Yes.
Right. 2,000 square feet, that's a large garage.
Yes. There's a lot. Well,
That's bigger than most
shop,
houses.
too.
Yeah.
At least to store vehicles out of the,
Well, that certainly isn't going to apply to one of these small lots.
no, it's not. It's going to just apply to your R1, your suburban residential, which is 10,000 square feet.
Is that,
And rural residential.
is that spelled out in here?
Yes.
And also, it looks like it's redundant here. 3 different times
It is.
say the same thing.
Yes, because there's 5 residential type zones, and that language was in each one of the codes. Each one of the development standards for the zoning, like R1, R2, R3, SR, and GR5 were all, had that language included in the development standards. So that's why you see it repeated 5 times
With the same numbers.
with the same number.
With the same.
Different ordinance numbers.
Different.
That's what threw me off. I thought it was the same too, and then
Well, I-
finally caught on that it was different ordinance sections.
17, 12, 60, and 17, 10, 60, 12, 60,
Yeah,
14, 30.
it's really similar language
14,
throughout
60.
each of those.
But you gotta address each one of them, or else it may not.
It got me too, Steve.
I believe in simplicity, but this
Well-
seems to stray away from that. Help me out here.
Well, this,
I think there are small things that are different in each of those, but overall, it's a lot of the same language for each zoning. So,
yes.
It couldn't be.
It applies to residential zones, and there happens to be 5 different residential zones. I had to do it 5 times. Yes, it is,
Confusing.
it can be confusing.
That's
and
the
it's
word I'm
maybe not simplifying, but it's gonna be simplifying for the contractors who want to not have to abide by that section. It's a small thing, but yet it can save the contractor some time and money with his planning effort that he makes for the house.
Okay, you say so. I'm not a contractor, so we'll leave it up to the contractors to shake it out. I
There
guess.
you go.
One other question I've got is, I noticed you start out here with these, and now you've explained it, that helps. But we're talking about construction, site-built
Yes.
structures. But then you go right into manufactured homes.
You can put manufactured homes in all residential districts as long as they meet the additional development standards.
Right, okay. Now, is the ordinance that applies to mobile home parks a whole different animal here?
Whole different animal.
Okay, now I've requested that ordinance or the language regarding that, and I still would like to see it because it is
Okay,
contrary to these requirements.
the mobile home park is a different residential zone altogether. It's not included in the language changes suggested here.
So this specifically addresses individual lots throughout the city,
Right.
correct? Okay, okay.
That's all I have. Is that all?
Well, I would suggest that the committee look into
Future work.
that difference, the different aspects of our ordinances regarding everything in here, actually, relative to mobile home RV parks.
Sure.
Because they are approached differently,
Right.
as well they should be. But,
Anybody have any
Okay.
further comments or questions?
Oh. Relative to the approach here about positioning the structure
Yes.
on the lot, 45 degree or whatever, traditionally, the house numbers have to be on the entranceway door, correct? Facing the street that you enter the dwelling.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
If you end up in a situation here where that entranceway is perpendicular to the street,
Correct.
shouldn't we specify that house, the structures have to have a number on it. They should have a number. I know there's a lot around town that don't, but that number can go on what would be the end of the house now
Yeah.
Right.
that faces the street.
Correct.
Yeah, front corner or whatever.
They still must abide by our house numbering ordinance.
Well, the ordinance says it has to be on the side of the house facing the street where the entrance is. But now we've changed it around where that entrance doesn't have to face a particular street, is my point. And that's big, that house number being numbered is important for fire and police protection.
Is there a separate ordinance that states that house numbers must face the street?
They must face the street. That's what it says, that, it's called the house numbering ordinance, it's in chapter 15, which is the same chapter as the building code, and it says that the number must face the abutting street.
Face the abutting street.
Right.
Nothing reference to front door being there or not. I can't remember exactly.
I don't think there's any reference to where the front door can be. It just has to be, the house number has to be seen on the road where the house
Okay.
sits.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
Thanks for clearing this.
You're welcome.
I almost ripped them all off, threw them away, except for the front two. Well done.
Do we have a motion to approve ordinance number 518?
Oh, 518.
Yeah, Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 1518, making certain amendments to the zoning code and waiving the second reading.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry, it just went right past me. Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 1518, making certain amendments to the zoning code and waiving the second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The vote is unanimous. Thank you. Now, the next item on the ordinances has to do with the revised salary schedule by ordinance for the police department. And Larry will present the details there, I believe.
The details are that the police department salary structure has changed for 2022, and the contract has listed those salaries. Now we have to make sure that the final administrative situation, we have to report those as part of the 2022 budget document. So this amends the budget document to include the salaries, including the salary change for the police chief. And so I would recommend that it be adopted and that you waive the second reading.
Council, do you have questions or comments?
I move to approve ordinance number 1519, amending ordinance number 1512, which is the 2022 budget, and providing for revised 2022 salary schedule and including the police department officer's salary grid and waiving the second reading.
I'll second.
It's been moved and, excuse me, it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 1519, amending ordinance number 1512, which is the 2022 budget, and providing for a revised 2022 salary schedule, and including the police department officer's salary grid, and waiving the second reading. Any further comments before we call for a vote? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we'll go on now to report of officers and city administrator, unless there's something else that Larry wants to raise.
No, I think we'll just continue on
Okay,
with the agenda.
it's a tough night.
I just wanted to let you know that the park plan meeting is still scheduled for May 23rd, which is next Monday at 6 p.m. The Community Development Committee did meet, and they want a subsection of that committee to spend some time getting the park plan updated. And so we're going to work on that on May 23rd, next Monday at 6 p.m. And then I just wanted to let you know that I'll be working pretty hard on, well, I need to finish the annual report. It's due by the end of May, and I'll be working on that this week and next to try to get that accomplished. I will get it accomplished one way or the other by the deadline, so.
Are you saying you don't want people coming in and messing with you for the next?
There you go. Well, if I'm busy, you'll know why.
Okay,
How about that?
sounds good.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Larry.
And Sandy has an announcement she'd like to
Sure.
do too.
Oh, we hired Tracy Gunyon as the finance administrative assistant to replace me at my current
Tracy.
job, so. Tracy Gunyon.
Tracy,
Yeah,
thank you.
so she started actually today.
Very good, very good. That'll make all the transition smoother.
Yep.
So she's gonna spend quite a bit of time training Tracy, and then she's gonna spend the next month after that being trained by Connie to move into her position. So she's got a lot of training off and training on.
There's gonna be a lot of training by needed by the mayor as well. Not sure who's gonna do that one. Thank you, Sandy, thank you. We'll hear now from our city council members, and we'll start with Andy Hong.
And we'll go to anything tonight.
Okay. Ellie?
Just a thanks to Public Works for the noxious weed spraying and for their work cleaning up the sidewalks. I noticed them out there getting the winter gravels cleaned up on the streets and sidewalks, which I appreciate.
All right, my turn. Thanks, Mayor. I had a few things. At the last council meeting, Larry read a list of the upcoming events. Remember that, Larry, that list you read?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I had some people reach out to me that want to have some events added to that list, okay? So here they are.
You gonna help me on this one?
Now, one of this is in this packet that was the June Blooms. The June Blooms is a garden walk on June 4th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And maps of the participating gardens will be available at the Chamber of Commerce or on the Chamber of Commerce's website. So the gist of it is, if you have a garden you want to share, you register your garden, and then there's a garden walk that happens and everybody shows off their gardens. All right, and then also on June 4th, kind of ties in here, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. will be the Seroptimist Spring Plant Sale. It's on Main Street in front of the Pat's Place and Dr. Ogden's office. And the nice thing about that sale is all proceeds from that sale go to support local programs to improve the lives of local women and girls through education. They do scholarships. So the Seroptimist is a really great organization in town, so that's one of their fundraisers. Perfect timing there. Okay, and then the last one. Now you ready to get excited for this?
Okay, drum roll.
Okay, it's the Goldendale citywide yard sales. Diana Notestein emailed me about this one. It'll be on June 17th and 18th. Anyone can sign up online for this on the GoldendaleChamber.org or the Goldendale Citywide Yard Sales on the Facebook. Or you can call or text Diana. Now she said, go ahead and put the number out there, so if you want to get it on the yard sale, her number is 261-0789. Now if you don't have enough stuff that you want to get rid of, you know, to have your own yard sale, is what you're going to want to do is go buy enough stuff at these yard sales this year, and then you can have your own yard sale next year to keep it rolling like that. That's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
You've got a strategy there.
Yeah.
Perpetual.
Yeah. It keeps the event going.
If you shopped really fast, you could probably do it the same year.
Well, possibly.
Possibly. Steve?
Well, just one thing. We've mentioned this or discussed this already too, and that is upgrading our audio on our Zoom and that. I just want to readdress that. We've got one speaker apparently.
So that speaker that's down there is just for you to listen for when people are talking on Zoom. If to hear it better, we can put it on a table, but it's kind of big, and though it takes up space, that's why it's on the floor. If I put it on the table, then it kind of takes away from people actually being able to see you. Because we don't really have a place to put it. This cord is only so far. It only goes to right there. That's it. That's not the the volume that people hear on Zoom comes from the microphones, and so those can hear just fine. So the speaker is only for when people are talking to you. It's not for them talking. They won't be able to hear you.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but like the presentations tonight, it sounded like they were in a tunnel.
Yeah, it was a little bit more difficult.
It can be that speaker, but once again, there's no place to put it but on the floor. You don't have a table set up that's not going to be in the way.
Get somebody to analyze that for us.
I can find out if they have another speaker system.
Smaller. I mean,
We had a smaller one, but it didn't work, so I'll ask Redcon.
It seems like sometimes that works real fine and other times there's difficulty. I've had a few people that have been on the Zoom that say they can't hear us.
Right.
Yeah, we just updated the
Oh.
Zoom and got an update, and they said they fixed the problem.
Oh, great.
Okay, okay. Well, then, yeah, you could look into possibly tweaking this.
Surround sound
I will ask
speakers.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. One up there in that corner and one over there.
Yeah, they've
With
installed different systems here, and it hasn't worked with
Okay.
theirs.
Even with lights in there.
I think
Yeah.
so too.
Prioritize.
You know, the electronics they've got today, I mean, incredibly small speakers that work really well.
I'll ask them again.
I appreciate it, yes. That'd be nice. We got some old folks in here that don't hear very well.
I miss words all the time. Do you have any more, or?
Well, just one other thing. It was mentioned about the Incubator
Yes.
Project some years ago.
Yes.
It just, nothing ever.
We decided it wasn't very feasible.
Is that what we decided?
Well, that's what the study came out with.
Oh.
We had a grant to do the study and it just didn't really pencil out.
Okay, yeah, because I remember a lot of discussion
Yes, we
in
did have.
regards to something with the incubator idea.
They'd like to bring it back up, and we've asked Richard Foster over at the county economic development department to take a look at it and see if there's some new ideas that can be brought forth, and maybe
Excellent.
even an economic development federal grant to see something move forward like that.
Excellent, yeah, because times have changed. This was
Yeah.
some time ago.
It was
know.
like 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. The climate, commercial climate has changed, economics and everything. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Because-
so I gave it to him. He's the expert in economic development.
Because I still think it's a good concept.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Larry.
On mayor's remarks, I want to bring everybody up to date on last weekend's plans that were changed. We had the International Women's Pilot Association. We're planning to bring, I think, 21 pilots, women pilots, to the airport, both to see the airport and then to go to the observatory and stay for a night or two here. They changed their plans to later in the year because of the weather. Not so much where we are, but where they were as well. These are gorge residents, pretty much. But we've already talked to them, and we're excited that they still want to do this. They've been here once before, years ago, and they're interested in the changes and our plans for the airport. So they'll be coming probably sometime this summer. And we'll make an effort to make sure everybody gets to meet them, see them, visit with them if they want. Amelia Earhart was a member of this particular women's association. That really got my interest. The other things, in particular, is just to remind, not only to remind us as a council, but as a city, that we have a very unique situation for a rural town of 3,500. We have incredibly well-trained fire, police, and public works teams, and their teams. They really work hard. And we're very, very fortunate for that. We're going to be putting out a proclamation for the fire and police departments so that it'll come out later this week, because next week is the week of the national celebration. But we are very, very fortunate to have the rapid reporting times for our fire department. I've seen things where police departments say, well, you might as well go ahead and take care of that because we're not going to be there for a couple of days. We don't have that. We have excellent service here. And I think we need to give every single one of them a pat on the back when we have a chance, because they do hard work and they do it really well. And I'm very appreciative that we have this kind of service in the city of Goldendale. There's no two ways about it. It's excellent.
Here, here.
Yeah, both fire and EMS workers week is next week, the 15th to the 23rd, 21st, 15th to the 21st, and so is police week. So we'll be putting a proclamation out just to draw attention for the public to the real strengths that we have within this city. It's something really good to have. And that's all I have on that, I hope. We'll go on now to public comment. Is anyone here in the council room here for a public comment? Or is anyone on the line wanting to make a public comment? Okay. I'm not sure what happened with Mike Goodpaster, but I think his remarks and the explanations that I gave on why we ask for the things we do when somebody's making a presentation, that's so that the things that are presented to you relate to what you're either working on or to your responsibilities as legislators. So we'll find out what the situation was there, but he was planning to be here tonight. And with that, do we have any motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
It's moved and seconded and lightly speed to adjourn City Council for May 16, 2022. Thank you, everyone. And thanks, everybody that's here.